Last year, Mr. Gorst assigned his music class with the culminating based around writing about a type of music that you deemed to be considered something that stands above most other forms. And as someone who had been stuck inside for far too long and could only socialize through video games, I ended up doing it based around Minecraft and how its music expertly enhances the game. I've decided to keep up that tradition, but instead focus on one specific composer. The year was August 13th, 1961. The Berlin Wall had just been put up, separating East and West Berlin for the next 28 years. On this same day, a newborn boy was born in Nagoya, Japan, and was given the name Koji Kondo. By the age of 5, he was taking his first electronic organ lessons, which gave him a background in music. In the future, he joined a cover band that focused on mainstream music. He had a large passion for video games and at the time was noticed by Nintendo and was offered a job. He willingly accepted it even though he had no background in classical music, which was normally incorporated at the time within video games in some way, shape, or form. It could have been inspiration or the theory behind it, but you tended to need to have a background in classical music to get any form of job working on video game soundtracks. He started out with small projects such as Punch-Out or Devil World in 1984, and both gained success and recognition. So in the year 1985, Nintendo decided to give him a bit of a bigger project, which ended up being the first Mario game. And as we all know, that had a massive success. The next year, he followed up with an equally huge project, which was the first Legends of Zelda game, and another massive success. Due to both these games being major successes, he was tasked with creating the music for multiple more soundtracks along the way. Throughout these years of creating new pieces of music, he was also tasked with a Legends of Zelda game called Ocarina of Time, which had a very important and influential soundtrack in gaming history due to its inclusion of atmospheric music, or ambient music as it might be more well known nowadays, which was the first in its time in video games. Think of soundtracks from games like Minecraft and Subnautica, which are both very well known for their soundtracks. Ocarina of Time was the first type of game to introduce this type of music. This type of music is mandatory for almost any and all open world games, so for obvious reasons this makes his composing a very important piece of history in the gaming world, and I can almost guarantee that if you play games on a regular basis, you've heard something within this music category. Now I'm going to show off my personal favorite piece of music created, which is the Great Fairy Fountain theme, which is a staple song to the Zelda series, first appearing in Link to the Past, and being in every game since. Compared to some of his other pieces of work, it is rather simple, and yet it's still one of my favorites. The reason I connected with this specific song is due to my childhood being heavily based around the Zelda franchise. As a kid, I was really only exposed to Nintendo games, And on top of that, my parents were mainly fans of the Zelda series, which limited my access to games to about only that series. However, I still enjoyed them and soon began asking for more as the years went by and more games came out. What I fell in love with, though, was the music that came with these games. Each song had its moments that fit their scenes perfectly, and as it evolved, the music kept changing to adapt the game's settings. However, the one song that stayed the same throughout the dozens of games has been the Fairy Fountain song, and has been a staple within them. Even after Koji Kondo finished creating music for his series, it was still used for games, including, and in my opinion, possibly the greatest game of all time. In the end, I just found it to be a really beautiful piece, which would go on in the future to cause me to become passionate for most video game music, and become well versed in it. Which in a way has affected me as a person. Henceforth, I love this song.